And you know, the other thing tonight, what we've told people, if they want to speak and drop their mask when they're at the station, we would accept that as long as they put it up when they go to sit down again, and we'll sanitize the station when the speakers are done. Okay?
All right.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thanks for having me.
Sure.
Matt Montalbo from Drescher Malecki. We performed the external audit for the town for the year ended December 31st, 2019. I'm here to present the results of that audit for the town board as well as the public. So the first thing what we do is we talk about the products of our audit. First, we'll go through our required communications to the board. Then we'll talk through our financial statement update, and then conclude with overall observations on the audit. So our required communications, the first thing we clarify is our responsibility in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards. And that really is to clarify that management is responsible for the books and the records. We come in as an independent third party and provide an opinion on those financial statements so that we provide an opinion that they fairly represent or fairly state your financial position. So as town board members, you can rely on that information in making budget decisions, and when you submit those to external third parties, they rely on that information as well. We did move forward with what's referred to as an unmodified or a clean opinion on the financial statements. So that's the best you can do from an audit standpoint. So we believe they fairly state the town of Wheatfield's financial position and results of operations for the year ended December 31st, 2019. Independence, that's a requirement, as I mentioned. All of our staff auditors, right up to the partner level, we're required to be free of conflicts of interest. That's a requirement for in accordance with our standards and what allows us to be objective in performing the audit. The significant policies and estimates, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board actually delayed the implementation of the GASB standards for 19. Given the COVID situation, those were deferred into 2020, so you'll be looking at those for the upcoming fiscal year. And then other matters, just, you know, obviously the audit fieldwork was performed primarily during the beginning and kind of, you know, heart of COVID. Really what I just want to say is to really give the town a lot of credit as far as their adaptability, the flexibility, and really the ability to allow us to conduct our audit even under those circumstances. So definitely to Ed and Debbie and Kathy and many of the departments to get us to the point where we can issue an opinion on the financial statements. So why don't we get into the financial statements. So 2019, obviously we're going to talk a lot about 2019, but we really have to talk about it in the context of what's going on right now. So first we'll kind of set the stage for 19. We'll talk through the majority of your major funds. We'll start with the water fund, and each fund that we go through will go through a revenue expenditure trend or an operations trend for the last 5 years, and then we'll talk about your fund balances at year end. So in the water fund, you can see a pretty favorable 5-year trend where that yellow line representing your revenues has exceeded the expenditure line for the last 5 years. For 2019, that exceeded in the amount of $83,000. So that is the amount that your fund balance increase in the water fund. So from $368,000 to about $451,000 in 2019. So that's on page 6. That represents about 31% of your budget within that fund. We kind of put it as a percentage because a lot of the best practices out there really they provide their recommendations based on a percentage of fund balance or percentage of your budget that you should have. Page 7, the sewer fund. Again, the 5-year operations trend. This fund has, you know, had a stable fund within from 15 to 17, and then lost fund balance in 2018. Kind of brought it back and stabilized in 2019, almost a break-even year, an increase of $3,000. So when you look at your fund balances, with the exception of 2017, pretty stable. Almost $350,000. That's about 17% of your budget within the water. And when you look at the water and sewer funds, because essentially the revenues are billed on a delayed or a lagged basis, so you're kind of waiting for those revenues to come in and that cash. The thing to look out for is cash balances and cash flow. So that we talked about the 17% of fund balance and the 31%, but you really have to look beyond that into what are the cash balances on hand within those funds, because you're relying on receivables to come in at year end. But all in all, when you look at water and sewer, in a stable position as of 19. Moving on to the refuse fund, and this was really the only fund during 19 that had a negative or a decrease in fund balance. And you can see the spike in expenditures from 18 to 19, the contractual costs of your garbage and as well as recycling. And that's something we're seeing across the board for towns, not just in Niagara County, but in Erie County as well. They've kind of seen that hit in their contractual costs. So $170,000 decrease in 2019 in the fund balances. So the fund balance was in a stable position, and it still is as of the end of 19, just under $500,000 in consideration with your budget. But when you look at your 2020 budget, it also assumes another about $150,000 difference. So it's something to keep an eye on in 2021 and beyond. Certainly, even with a $150,000 hit, there is enough fund balance to sustain. But once you start getting into 2021, 2022, that's where those revenues have to kind of come in line with the expenditures. Moving on to the highway fund, a fairly stable trend. Highway fund is one of the funds with sales tax within the operations. So a fairly stable trend over the last, from 15 to 18. 2019, you saw an increase both in expenditures and revenues, more kind of one-time dedicated state aid for equipment. So if you kind of adjusted for that fact, it'd be a pretty similar line to the prior years. But with that, you did increase fund balance about $170,000 in 2019. So you did see a favorable increase in the fund balance from about $850,000 to just over $1 million within the highway fund. So that's about, when you look at the assigned portion, it's about 32% of your budget or your operations, so in a stable position. And then finally, the general fund. This is a trend that from 15 to 17, expenditures have exceeded revenues. 2018 was almost a break-even level, and then 2019, you saw an increase of $272,000. Primarily due to a one-time item, sale of property in the Whitmer Road area. Certainly, if you adjusted for that, it'd probably be about a break-even year in 2019 as well, very similar to 2018. But when you look at your fund balances within the general fund, a few more categories to consider in the general fund. The unassigned portion is really the one that people keep an eye on because that's the truly available funds. So your total fund balance increased to $1.6 million. When you focus in on the unassigned portion, it was at $792,000 at the end of 2019. That represents 18.5% of your appropriation. So when the government finance officers, they give a best practice of a minimum of 2 months operating, so about 16.67% is where they put that at. So you're above that level for 2019. And I think when you kind of conclude on 19 and where the fund balances were, definitely a stable position. You saw a lot of positives. The refuse fund is kind of the one area that to keep an eye on. But we do have to kind of consider this in the context of what's going on in 2020 and how your revenues are being impacted by not only the economy and the restrictions that COVID kind of provided, but also the impact on the New York State budget. So when you look at kind of going forward and projecting 2020, the big piece is sales tax represented about $5 million in 2019 when you look at your general fund and highway fund total. So a pretty substantial revenue to the town. when COVID started, just about everybody's trying to project where the sales tax is going to go, and there's been ranges for anywhere from 10% to 25% being kind of in the most severe scenario. As far as actuals that have come in the most like recently reported data, it's probably closer to that 10% level, but even 10% is of $5 million is a $500,000 impact, you know, and a decreased revenue to the town. So you kind of couple that with what's going on with state aid. As part of the budget process this year, New York State passed the balanced budget amendment, which kind of allows them to adjust and reduce state aid at given points throughout the year. They've already started to cut certain programs 20%, some more than that. So this is an area that could impact the town beyond 2020. And then mortgage taxes is included within state aid. It's difficult to project the impacts of COVID because certainly there's a lot of real estate activity that slowed, but there was also, you know, a lot of refinancing out there, and as well as the interest rates have dropped. So that data is going to come in recently as far as that COVID period. How did COVID really impact that mortgage tax period? And then, you know, really obviously your departmental revenues, when you're closing down certain departments, obviously the courts, a lot of towns are seeing, you know, recreation, courts, a lot of those areas that had to stop operations, you know, certainly an impact. And if there's a second shutdown, you know, in 2020 or 2021, that obviously will have an impact on those departmental revenues. So, you know, I've given this presentation to a lot of towns this year, and so everybody is going through the same situation. So some impacts are more than others. You know, for the town of Wheatfield, you're in a stable position as of the end of 19. I'm sure you're starting to see some of those reduced revenues, at least from sales tax. But I think when you look at the overall budget, certainly you got to be conservative. But in your major funds outside of that refuse, certainly in a decent position to be flexible and kind of absorb some of those changes. So in conclusion, we talked about the stability at the end of 19 and some of the impacts of 2020 going forward. From an internal control standpoint, even, you know, despite some of the closure, we did not identify any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in the internal controls. You know, still the levels of reviews took place, and that oversight within the town to be able to rely on those numbers when they get to the board. So, you know, another positive from an internal control standpoint. And then, you know, really just going forward, looking at the budget process. Obviously, it's so difficult to project, but being as conservative as possible. Any questions or concerns?
I just have a comment, and you had mentioned the garbage costs. That's something I don't think anybody expected, and you had mentioned that all of the municipalities went through the same thing. It wasn't just a minor hit, it was a major hit,
Significant.
which we really weren't prepared for. I don't think anybody was.
Nope.
And we've tried to adjust as we can, but I think, not to make excuses, but nobody expected it. And we had extended our contract for, what, 5 years, Matt?
Well, we had worked out a deal to extend it, but it was in fact a state law competitive bidding. I think that worked to our disadvantage. We had to send it out to bid, and that
Right.
reduced our cost of transfer. So
Sure.
the state mandate wasn't enough to prevent.
Yep. Yeah, and I think when you look, I went to the refuse trend. Your revenue you did adjust your revenues as much as you could from 18 to 19, and hopefully that gap will narrow as you go forward. Any other questions?
Okay, anybody have any questions for Matt? I guess another comment, it'll be interesting to see, and I think Matt or Ed knows, and the town board knows, that we are trying to trim as much as we possibly can, projecting ahead towards next year. Especially, it doesn't look like COVID is going to disappear overnight, for sure. So this year's budget is going to be very difficult, and we've already taken measures to limit spending, equipment, etc. So hopefully we'll get a good report. If we don't, we're not gonna let you come back. So, but thank you so
Touche.
much. Anybody have any questions for Director Malecki? Again, well, next year's gonna be interesting for all of us.
It absolutely is. Yeah,
And
I
let's
think
hope that
at least, you know, you kind of have the stability at the end of 19 to be able to absorb and have some options.
And I want to thank Ed for everything that he does for us, and certainly appreciate it, Ed. I know I do.
I have one question. If, Wheatfield gets, most of our revenue for sales tax is snow, and quite a bit of that comes in from the Canadian travel. And they're doing the census of 2020 this year. Have you heard when, because normally those numbers on a normal 10-year cycle in January, they're reportable. Have you heard anything about when the census numbers may be reportable so that, Wheatfield can get maybe another increase in the sales tax money?
Right. I have not. I would probably err on the more conservative side that impact may not be seen, you know, on January. You know, it may take 6 months to a year, if not longer. But that is a good point. If it's a favorable adjustment, certainly that would help with, you know, offset some of these uncertainties of sales tax.
But it seems like that is also, the census is way behind also with their original schedule, so who knows
Right.
when we'll see the benefits of that too, so.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah,
if
a lot of
anybody,
uncertainty out there.
yes, for sure, a lot of it coming up. If no one else has any questions, then we'll thank you so much. And we still have a few minutes before our board meeting starts, and what we'll do is we'll take about a 10-minute break so that you can clean up your equipment, and we'll sanitize the station, and we're good to go.
All right.
Thank
Thanks
you
for your
so much
time.
for coming in.
Appreciate it.
Great to see you again.
You too.
Take a 10-minute break, folks.
Right. Good.
I think so. You know, one of the things they're hoping, everything was going to send to you, to put the helicopter in place, the site work, and it goes forth. And you know, Tom, I've been waiting to do this for you, but I also have, I would like, if you would come up here for a second, Tom. Now, Tom knows about this helicopter. The story behind this helicopter, one day Tom and I were meeting about the monument out back and all of the things that we were going to do. And I'm going to tell you, without Tom and the veterans group, this wouldn't be getting done. And I just, you know, I called Tom, and as I was saying the other day, when they're putting the helicopter up on the lift, up on the mount, and there was a gentleman next to me, I don't know what his name is, obviously a veteran, and he had tears in his eyes. And I said to him, I said, bring back some memories? He goes, yeah, I was in the infantry, and I flew many missions in those helicopters. It also moved me. And without saying, Tom, I want to thank you, and I know I called you up, and it's an emotional time for me also. And I want to thank you for everything you've done in your committee. Without you, this wouldn't be getting done. And whether you like it or not, you're going to get your helicopter tonight. And Tom, just so you know, this is a handmade, I've had this for years in my collection, of a UE helicopter, and it is anybody that's deserving, it's you. And I'm sure with your wife's permission, you'll have a good place.
Oh, we gotta pick that.
Hey, Tom, thank you. Don, you want to turn, face the camera?
Sure.
Thank you.
These are a couple photographs we taken. We were trained and placed getting ready to put the helicopter up on its stand. And also, so we put that in the reader's office.
All right, thank you, Tom, thank you one and all. And again, like everybody has heard so many times, it's not a one-person job. You know, this is a real community effort. We've had many veterans who were able to help, and we've had some veterans who were only there in spirit, because many veterans are not in condition anymore. We are all getting quite a bit older. Town board has been very helpful. They've been supported with everything we've needed, and I thank each and every one of you for all the things you've done to further what we've got going today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, public input. Who do we have on the list tonight? There we go, Doris. Doris brought a bodyguard with her, so. And she has told me already that it's going to run over 3 minutes, and so the constables will tackle her and drag her out of the room over 3 minutes. So.
All righty. Thank you, Mr. McSwan, and to the members of the board. As you know, I've been very voiced in the attempts to finally get the reconstruction of Ward and the Boulevard completed. My fight is not one of a political agenda, but as a concerned resident that can't understand why the DOT feels that our safety and concerns can repeatedly be pushed aside, basically saying that we, the residents of the town of Wheatfield, don't matter to them. I am well aware of the current financial situation caused by the stress of COVID-19. I also understand that sometimes necessity has forced a rob Peter to pay Paul decision. We've all had that happen to us. But this is not a vacation fund that could be pulled from during tight times and financial years. It is an approved, budgeted dollar amount, one that it was approved years ago that should not have been dipped into or achieved to achieve other improvements for the state of the other areas of the state. Had this been monitored to and objected 5 years ago, we wouldn't be hearing excuses of COVID-19. I know what you are all saying to yourselves. This is a DOT issue. It's not a town issue. There is nothing that you can do. We have just as little say-so as you residents. My apologies up front, but I don't believe you. Just as my constant nagging has opened up a door to the town, your constant calls and questioning would put some pressure on this issue. You, all of you on those risers, were elected to represent us, all the rest of us that are sitting on the floor. You are all we have as our voice. All of this being said, and I know that the answers to these two questions may not be available tonight. I do have a couple. According to the New York State Governor website, in 2016, federal funding was made available to the New York State DOT in the amount of $112.3 million for 38 projects to enhance mobility and safety on the roadways across New York State. In the Western New York region, $4.8 million was awarded to be distributed to 3 projects, and now I'm quoting, $1.8 million for a new lane between Ward Road and Niagara Falls Boulevard. The new lane will reduce rear end and left turn crashes caused by aggressive driving and failing to yield the right of way. Now, to my knowledge, Niagara Falls Boulevard has been a 4-lane highway for at least 30 years. So I can only deduce that this left turn lane that is specified in this description is something extra to be added, not painted arrows on the existing left lane. So my question is, what happened to this funding? Why was it not used for its intended purpose in 2016 and 2017? And by the way, this is the only one of those 3 projects that was not completed or even started. Up until recently, the reconstruction of the intersection of Ward and the Boulevard was listed separately with a separate budgeted amount from any other boulevard reconstruction. The Ward Boulevard intersection widening has now been bundled with the reconstruction of Niagara Falls Boulevard and Whitmer Road, thereby requiring new and additional research increased. Was there separate budgets that will now be just combined? Is the original budget just being split? Was there ever a question posed during your recent conversations with the DOT as to which of the 2 intersections will be started first, assuming that both of them won't be done at the same time? And what will happen if the budget runs out prior to being 100% complete? Does the state have a priority? Will we be waiting even longer for the safety of our residents? The questions that I have posed here all deal with financial and budgeted amounts. This is because I am sure that finance is the song that will be sung either to explain the past delays or any future excuses. Well, I don't buy it, because one single life lost wipes out any budget excuse. So far, the impression that has been given to the Wheatfield residents is that the state doesn't value life the same way that we do. Supervisor and members of the board, as stated previously, the questions above should be posed and received answers from the state DOT. As residents, we are not being heard by the state DOT, and therefore we only have you to fight for us. And that is, after all, what we elected all of you to do. Thank you for your consideration.
Any comments, gentlemen? Any board members have any comments? And I'm not going to sit here and make excuses, but I will say, and you and I have talked on the phone many times, and it didn't start with this administration. It started back with several administrations I know of that have gone after DOT. And I remember years ago when I was building inspector, we were talking about it then. So it shows you how many years ago when they were talking about doing this intersection. And of course, I can't make excuses for the DOT, but our relationship with DOT, I would say, is probably strained at times because it's very difficult to get action or reaction from them, even related to new subdivision proposals. I think everybody's aware that the town of Wheatfield, when I started also, because of pressure, we did send them a letter again, and we did meet with DOT. We went up there with our engineers, and we met, and we discussed the time period as to when it should be done or could be done. And I think, as you know, we've already been given the June of 2022, and with an estimated cost of $4.69 million for the project. And to say that DOT doesn't value lives, well, you know, I don't agree with that. I just think, I mean, we have areas that are prone to accidents all over, not just Niagara County and Erie County. But I think it all comes down to the money. And all I can say to you is that we have met with them. We've had a Zoom call with them just recently about trying to move it up, and it's not going to happen. The only thing we can do is continue to put pressure on, and I just hope like heck that when 2022 comes along, that it's done. And the reason I'm concerned about that is because I see how not only the town of Wheatfield, but New York State and the federal government are all hurting financially right now because of COVID-19. All I can say to you, I wish it had been done. I think we talked just a few weeks ago about the piece of property where the restaurant was. They were talking about purchasing that property years ago so they could start the project. I don't believe it's even been done yet. So hopefully with continued pressure from the town of Wheatfield and all of the people here that, and I think you're right, I think we have a responsibility as town board members to continue to put pressure on them to make sure that it's done. And I want to thank you for bringing this back to us again. And I know we've talked, and I thought, well, what else can she say? But you said a lot. And I thank you. And I think what we'll have to do is to continue to either verbally or in writing continue to put pressure on them because there was just another accident here last week. And it's terrible. I was sitting at the intersection, and a car went through the intersection probably doing 70 miles an hour, and the light had just turned red. It's horrible. But also people driving, you know, and I know that it's not helped a lot, but we did have the speed limit reduced, and that was kind of a pat on your back, we'll do something. And they did put new signage up. But it's funny, I come down from the gym, when I go to the gym, and I do 45, and people are flying by me. But I want you to know that the state police and the sheriff department about every day. I talked to Joe Tortorella day before yesterday, and he has ticketed many cars going through the intersection. So I guess all I can say to you is, because DOT has the money, if we continue to put pressure on them, which we will, and we have the police and the state police out here doing the ticketing and speed control, I've noticed a lot of people are doing 45, so they must have been through the radar trap already. and the others that haven't. I don't know if you noticed the sheriff was sitting here tonight, watching cars going through. And I don't know what the total tickets are. Joe's going to let me know, but I know they pulled over a ton of vehicles in the last week. So I guess, you know, maybe you and I get together one time and we'll just continue to put pressure on them. And as the date comes, I think, again, with our town board, citizens groups, people like you, say, hey, enough is enough. And I think that's all we can do, and continue to have the police enforcement out here. I don't know if you know, but the day that the speed limit was reduced, after a warning, I think 10 days, something like that, they had radar set up right down the road here with the state police. And they actually had 2 cars, one flagging people over and the other one writing tickets. So I guess that's the best we can do for now, but we'll continue to put pressure on them. And you have my word, I will do that. And if you want to be involved, you're more than welcome. But we don't have the money. Let's hope New York State does in 2022 to do this project. And finally, we'll have a cocktail and celebrate it. Thank you. Okay, for the, let's see, where are we here? We got winded here. For the board, for the record, all board members are present.
Is there anybody, can anybody else speak?
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't have the list here. Oh, we do, I'm sorry, it's underneath everything else. John, did you want to speak, or? No, I can speak. Okay. Jesse?
Thank you. I understand Mrs. Carlson's concerns about this Ward Road issue. It's been an issue for many, many, many years. Every time I drive through that intersection, which is frequently, I hold my breath. One of my very good friends got hit on his motorcycle there about 10 years ago. He hasn't been able to walk since without a cane. The problem is there's oncoming traffic, there's no real turning lane, and people don't pay attention. And it's just been a problem for a very, very long time. So we identified the problem. I reached out to the regional director of the DOT back in May. And after several attempts to get a hold of him, emails, phone calls, he finally responded to me on May 13th and gave me some information, basically everything that Doris just said about the timelines. He gave me a contract number. He did say that they've been working on title searches and buying parcels of land from business owners and homeowners over the last several years, but how long does that take? It's been over at least 10 years or so. Just seems like it's been way, way, way too long. On their website, they're saying that the cost is about $2.2 million. As you guys all said, we're looking at over $4 million. What he told me. The money's supposedly there. A lot of miscommunications, a lot of lip service from the DOT, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I'm an elected official. It took me several days and even a few weeks for them to even return my phone call. So I could imagine how long it takes for them to return their phone calls. Something needs to be done. I know that they say it's going to be done. They gave us a projected timeline. Now that COVID happened, you know, is that going to push it back another couple years? In the meantime, I asked if they could do something simple, put up some temporary signs, do something in the meantime. And they said even there's a process involved with that. So I said, well, why don't you start that process and get back to me? I haven't heard a thing from them since.
They have put up signs.
Sorry?
They have put up signs, Jesse.
Okay. When did they put the signs up?
10 days ago.
Okay. But they promised to at least keep me in the loop. I didn't even know about that. They should have sent me an email and said that they did something.
You know, but it's funny. You know, they put the signs up, dangerous intersection, etc. And it's amazing. Like I said, I'm driving from the gym and people fly by doing 70. A lot of it's the drivers. People are.
I agree with that.
Crazy.
I agree with that. I mean, what sparked this whole thing was there was a horrific accident back in May. You might say which one. Take a pick. There's accidents there, it seems like every other day. So, I mean, they're on the radar. I'm not going to let up. I know Doris and a lot of the other residents aren't going to let up. I know we got the support from you guys. I just hope that they promised me that they would have a public hearing and to get input from the residents, and I'm hoping that they'll notify you guys, the town, and the town will notify the residents. So I'm looking forward to that. Thank you.
Yeah, and you know, Jesse, that's one of the things they will be doing, and Doris, so you know, there'll be public informational meetings for residents, just like they did once before. So that residents can, it'll probably be at the community center, people can come and look at the layout, the changes being made. I know Kurt is working with our landscape architect to try and identify Wheatfield, so that we're gonna do some landscaping and things to make it a little more identifiable as a community, instead of just a pass-through from Niagara Falls to Amherst. And so far it's been pretty good. So, and Kurt, you may want to touch on that after a little bit about what you've been doing. But yeah, we're involved,
Yes.
and we're trying to make some things better for Wheatfield and better for the intersection, and we will continue to put pressure on these folks.
Did they mention when they might have a meeting like that at all?
Well, I know they're still working on design stages.
Okay.
As you know, Whitmer Road is going to go directly
Okay.
across into the park. So until they come up with design stages, they're looking at awarding the bids in June of '22 and starting construction of August of '22. So that's the best I can tell you. I would assume that sometime next year there'll be informational meetings where people can make comments, just like they did the last time. How many years ago was that? Anybody remember? 8, 10 years ago? So.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jesse, appreciate it. And, you know, I know before, I just want to make a point, I got upset because, you know, with COVID-19, the town of Wheatfield has certain mandates that we have to follow. We have no choice. And we have a lot of people that come to the door, and pardon my French, say this is all bullshit, it's nothing but the flu. The bottom line is the town of Wheatfield has been proactive with the mandates, and when people lie at the door to say, oh yeah, I signed in, or I called ahead, I don't appreciate it. I saw people coming in that weren't on the list. And the bottom line is, I have to think as town supervisor about the safety and welfare of not just our board members, but of all of the people sitting here tonight. So when people start sitting 4 or 5 abreast, 1 row apart, that upset me. And they're not thinking about anyone else in the room, they're thinking about their own personal needs. I just want you to know I apologize for getting upset, but I have a responsibility to make sure we address all these laws. So, thank you. All right, let's move on. Approval of the minutes for August 3rd. Oh. You know, I keep burying this. I guess I don't want you to talk, Julie. Let me find it. Okay, we got Giuliano. I'm sorry.
I called in, I registered,
I know you did. I saw you on the list.
And you're like, uh-oh. So I saw on the agenda that the subdivision between Shawnee Road, Town Line Road, and Sloceric is on the agenda to be approved tonight.
Yes.
My question is, was the original design changed in any way, or is there still an entrance on Shawnee Road?
Okay, what this approval would be tonight, and I'm hoping that it does go forth, because, you know, after the 62 days, it's assumed that it's approved anyway. We are going to send it back to the planning board with a preliminary plat approval. And by preliminary plat approval, can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. With a preliminary plat approval, it's sending back to them with concerns and conditions. And and Tim's going to touch on that before we bring up the motion, some of the things that we're going to ask the planning board to check on. Well, when we get to that motion, but there's going to be some things. But we're basically approving the preliminary plat. Drainage still is going to be addressed. Traffic has to be addressed. The Hall Road has to be addressed. All those things will be passed on to the planning board.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. And let me just reiterate my concerns that having a entrance on the south side of that slope is precarious, it's dangerous. There was an accident not near there, but up on September 4th that all the traffic going south had to be rerouted down Sloceric and Town Line. And then on September 5th, there was an accident on Shawnee near like Wild Wing, Loveland. So it is a road, like you were describing with the boulevard, that people just barrel through there.
Yeah.
And whether the speed limit is 40, 50, whatever it is, people go what they go, but that is a blind spot.
It is.
And it is horrible in the winter. It glazes over, everything I've already said. And I really think that, when the builder considers this, that they really need to think about that, because I think it's going to open the town up to liability if we approve it with with an entrance on Shawnee, and it's just a recipe for disaster and injury and the whole safety thing. So I just wanted to make sure that,
But
my
Julie, just so
concerns
you
were-
know, the developer needed no variances. He has addressed all the town zoning laws, all the subdivision regulations. So it's going to go back to the planning board with recommendations from us, including a traffic study, not just a traffic study that Tim, I don't want to steal his thunder.
Okay.
But we'll talk about that, because I went out and looked at the site, and it's in a bad location coming out into Shawnee Road there with a hill. So we're hoping that, here we go, DOT again, we'll give special considerations as to what we can do there to make it better.
And I'm not opposing the subdivision. I'm
Yeah.
opposing that entrance. So I just
Yeah.
want to be clear. I'm
I
not
get it.
trying to, I'm just saying that that is a really, really bad spot, especially in the winter. So I appreciate your listening to my concerns.
And again, we are going to send our concerns to the planning board. And Walt, are you here somewhere? He was here. Walt's here. And hopefully that they will, again, they are kind of a governing body themselves, and they will address our concerns. And again, it still has to come back to us in the future for final approval.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
It's a tough spot right
Thank
there.
you, Julie.
as you
Sorry
know.
I didn't see you on the list.
I know,
And I think Ron Delani, is he here, or did I scare him out of the building? I think I scared him. All right. Anyone else that's registered? I think we got them all. Okay, approval of the minutes. August 3rd, 2020. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
A motion and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Approval of the payment of bills for August 24th, 2020. We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Bill payment of September 14th, 2020, voucher number 202-01502 through 202-01633, with a total amount of $296,701.16. Have a motion, please? Hello? Motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, department heads. Paul Siegman. Sure, please.
Just a couple things tonight real fast. We talk about New York State. They're great. They cut my CHIPS funding by 20%. About a little over $24,000 we lost for paving this year. But they did manage to send letters out to me letting me know everything I've done wrong in town and that I need to fix on their roads. It's really special because they get to me a little bit.
You want to give us a little brief explanation as to what they're asking for, Paul?
They went through and looked at signposts and said they can't be any higher than 4 inches. The best part is some of the signposts are theirs. They no longer put street signs up. When a project goes through, they'll put a street sign up, but they won't replace it once it gets run over. They only use route numbers. Sidewalks that we never took ownership of on Ward Road that we've been complaining about for years. They nicked me for having uneven sidewalks. I said, they're not ours. They're yours. Well, they can't be. Well, they are. Stop lines where our roads come onto state roads. They put the stop signs up. They should put the stop line down. It's more or less New York State just trying to push stuff off on the local communities, the counties. It's getting totally ridiculous. I mean, our budgets are tight as it is, and what they're doing to us makes it harder and harder. So anyways, enough about that. We are going to be starting a project. I call it the North Burkholz Project. We're going to be making drainage improvements on the north side of Niagara Road, all narrow roads over there. We're going to try to widen quite a few of them. We will be moving mailboxes. We will be cutting some driveways back a couple feet. It's going to take time. We're doing this ourselves. It's not being contracted out. We can't afford to contract it out. So So it is probably gonna be a mess, and I'm sure I'll get some phone calls. We are gonna give a letter out to each homeowner that lives on that side of Burkholz, so they know what we're gonna be doing, but I'm hoping within 2 years' time we'll be done. I wanted to start it earlier this year, but due to budget constraints, we really couldn't do it. I mean, I got 15 guys. I can only do so many projects at one time. I would like to send out a thank you, and they're not here to hear it, but hopefully they'll see it in the paper or something, to Mark Zellner, who's the head of NT's DPW, and Mark Dagler, who's in charge of their sign and light shop. We had an issue on Forest Parkway. There's a signal light there for the railroad tracks that go across. It's been there, I don't know, probably 15 years now. And there was a lightning strike down the road in NT. Well, somehow that travels through everything, tracks especially. Burn out some of the main boxes, main switches in there, and these switches were put in by another company, and they were Canadian, and it was a mess. They worked on that for almost 3 months. Basically took it out of my hands. They dealt with the railroad, and finally got it fixed. They told me I got a bill of about $1,500, and it's just for the parts. They've come out several times. Now this is shared services. Yes, we've returned a favor, but just to let you know, I'm saying this saved us $10,000 to $15,000. So, I'd like to say a big thank you to them guys out there.
Thank you to North Tonawanda for sure.
Back to my normal thing, chipping. Chipper will be out. When leaves start falling, don't cut no more trees down, because once we put the leaf suckers out, the chipper comes off the road. I can't run all 3 things and try to do anything else. So, October 1st last year, we didn't get them out till the middle of October because there were no leaves falling. But just keep that in mind if you're planning trimming your trees. If you don't got them out by October 1st, probably shouldn't put them out, because once we get the leaf suckers out, that's it. Anything else? You guys got any questions?
You know, Paul, I have a question not related to what you talked about, just a kind of a background here. We have some trees over behind Wilrose on town property, and they're threatening some of the neighbors' properties over there, sheds, etc. So we have to knock them down. They're ash trees. Anything on the bids there yet, Paul?
I contacted 5 companies. So far, 2 have responded. They haven't given me a price yet, but they said they were going to give me prices on taking them down.
Okay.
Normally, we take some trees down. These are around too close to the people's sheds and everything else. I'm not taking a chance.
Sure.
And some of them are very, very large, so.
Okay.
It's going to, no. As far as I know, it won't be done till next spring. I don't know. That whole project seems to be like one big nightmare from everything I've been told. And you know what? I got your letter today on my email, but I got it late. I didn't get a chance to look up where you're exactly at on Lake Mead. Are you on, which side are you on? Are you towards Cy Road or Jago?
Paul, it's in the same location. I'm sorry, but I was also at the property. And there is one that where I'd asked you to check out that receiver, and you said it doesn't exist.
Yeah, we've got a receiver we want to clean out over there.
Okay.
We are going to do a little bit of drainage in the backyard. There's a high spot in one of the swales.
Right.
I have gotten complaints from Lake Mead, but most of the complaints I get is on the backside that butts up against the wetlands, and they want me to drain the wetlands. I can't do that. But what you're saying, because I've seen it late, I will come over and take a look at it and see what the issue is. We do got to clean out. It's not even a catch basin. It's just where a bunch of pipes come together. It's full. You got to get over there and clean that out. I just was made aware of that like a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. So we are going to get over there and try to do something for that. Now, as far as no pipe being on that side of the road, I'm not sure.
I think there is, Paul. You can just see the top of the pipe. When I walked back with Lou Anastasi, on the Jago Road side, it looked like we could see the top of a pipe, but it looked like it was plugged solid, so there was nothing there, and her property does drain that way.
Right.
And she's also got an issue where behind her house it's very, very low too, which needs
no,
dirt too.
like I said, we're going to go over and we're going to take a look at that. We're going to clean out where the pipes go in. We'll sewer jet and make sure the pipes are open.
Okay. You might have to put a receiver in there, though.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
once we get it cleaned out, yeah. I don't know why a receiver was never put in there, to be honest with you. Right. And, well, and that's what I said. I said, if you can have a drain towards that corner, that would be your best bet.
Right.
Right. When you're saying our drainage easement, or our right-of-way, that's 33 feet from the center of the road. That's as far up into the property as I go. Is there a drainage right-of-way between the two houses? I don't know. Okay. I'd like to see a copy of your, if you have your deed, I'd like to see a copy of that. I'll get it after the meeting. Survey. Okay. All right, I'll take a look at that real fast.
Paul, if you'd like, I'll go over there with you.
Yeah, I'll take a look
I've been
at it.
over there and I can see there's several issues.
Okay.
And one is one of the neighbors 2 or 3 houses down is either overfilled their yard and the water's supposed to drain that way and also to Jago Road, so.
Right, and I said we gotta get over there.
Okay.
No, we're gonna,
Well, okay, well, look, we'll have somebody go out and take a look at it again. Paul, if you want me to go, maybe somebody from the building department also go again. But also, and you and I had looked at your property, right behind your house, it's also quite low, which is. Okay. I understand that, but just bringing the grade up at the back of your house, like I said, you'll probably lose a step in will prevent the water from at least running into that hole. Okay, great. Okay, we'll have somebody come out and take a look at it, which we've done before. Polly, maybe we can get that hump taken out of the backyard and get a receiver in there. Okay, all right? All right, sure.
anything else?
No, thank you, Paul. Mike Clark. Building inspector. I'm sorry? I know.
K
Sorry about
comes,
that.
K comes
I've been
before R.
goofing up on the list and everything
There you
tonight,
go.
so what can I tell you?
Evening. Actually, I don't have anything.
Okay.
It just seems weird after 6 months to come back up here. I like the Zoom ones better.
Yeah,
Just telling you.
And you're the only one.
But if you guys have any questions for me.
Anybody have anything for Mike Clark? By the way, Mike, you did mention that, believe it or not, house construction has been going up in Wheatfield, so that's a good thing. We're actually ahead of last year, correct?
Yeah, the concern was, with us being closed as long as we did, what it was going to affect as far as the housing market. Well, to date, compared to 2019, we're up a half a dozen houses over already, and that's with even that shutdown period, so pretty positive.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Anybody have anything for Mike?
No, you got the other Mike Rinaldi next.
Yeah.
Mike, just want to thank you for participating in some of our meetings with the youth of the Wheatfield and Wheatfield.
You're right.
No, thanks. I appreciate you. Very much so. Thanks, Kurt. Anything else, guys?
Okay, the other Mike. Mike Clark, or Mike Rinaldi, come on up, Mike.
Just a couple of quick things. First, thanks to the town board, help with the constables and my staff, we opened the community center 2 weeks ago, back for regular meetings. Haven't done any activities on the weekends like any of our parties, but it's nice to get the doors back open. It was real nice to get the seniors back in the last couple weeks for them to get out, socialize, kind of get reacclimated into whatever normal life that we're living right now. Second thing, I've been working with a couple of towns trying to formalize a plan to reopen the youth center. We kind of try to streamline our paperwork because there is some paperwork that has to get submitted to the state. So I've been working actually with North Tonawanda. It's funny, Paul said he worked with North Tonawanda. North Tonawanda's been great. They've provided a lot of materials. So I'm going to go through some of that, and I'm going to kind of get together with them and see if we can come up with a safe plan to get the kids back into our building safely. So other than that, that's all I got.
How's it going at the community center? The seniors?
Great. It's been good.
I know the seniors were quite apprehensive at first.
They were, but once they saw procedures we have, how everything's being cleaned about 12 times a day, we have our contact tracing sheets that they fill out when they come in. They're pretty comfortable.
Great. Anybody have anything for Mike? Mike, maybe just gives them a little heads up on the, and this is strictly in the talking stage of a possible Halloween event at Fairmount Park where we maintain social distancing. Mike, you want to touch on it just a little bit?
Typically, we run this party over at the youth center, and it's my favorite event of the year. We usually get anywhere between 200 and 400 people, and just can't do it safely this year. It's impossible. So one of the ideas, my staff at the youth center is fantastic. So one of the ideas was to bring it to Fairmount Park, and we have like 6 different ideas. Anything from just having like a casual parade or a walk around the pathway. Kids can come and dress up in their costume. They come to the park for an hour, hang out, take a couple of pictures, and go home. Can do some activities in the pavilion. So very preliminary. We would love to do it. I want to do it. I think the community would love to do it, be involved and come to it. We just want to make sure we do it right and do it safe. So once we get details ironed out, hopefully by the next meeting on the 28th, maybe? 28th?
Yeah.
Hope to have more details for you then. Right.
You know, the other thing, if anybody would like to be involved with maybe to help out, be greatly appreciated. I know the staff will be tapped because we're looking at the whole path over there. But maybe somebody, because we still have to maintain social distancing, but I think it's a great idea. I hope we can do it. We talked this morning, and Mike, I thank you. I think it's a great idea. I think everybody's had it with COVID-19 and all the rules and regulations. I'm hoping we can do it, and I think it'd be great for the kids and great for the community if we can do it.
Sounds
And
good.
I thank you for coming up with the idea.
Thanks.
Anybody have anything else for Mike Rinaldi? Mike and Mike? Assessor, Kelly.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi, Kelly.
Really kind of hard to say there's not much going on in the assessor's office, but it's not that time of year where I'm collecting exemptions or doing any of that valuing or anything. But with just me alone in the assessor's office, my clerk, Mary Beth Long, retired after 23, 24 years here at Wheatfield. So I am in the office all by myself, trying to answer the phone calls. I'm getting an average about 33 calls and messages a day, so I'm trying as much as I can to answer everybody in a timely fashion. I am also doing payroll, so today was no phone calls, just all payroll. So, but I did want to mention that if you have received the Enhanced Star in the past, there's nothing you have to come and see me for. The state has taken over. The state will verify your income and let me know if you qualify or not qualify. If anybody is turning 65 in the year 2021, they need to come and apply for the Enhanced Star before March 1st. Everybody calls and says, oh, I didn't know I could apply before I turned 65. So even if your birthday is December 31st of 2021 and you're turning 65, if you want to apply for that Enhanced Star, you need to come and see me prior to March 1st. So, I think that's all for me. I wanted to say thank you to the town board for making me full-time. I really appreciate it. I hope I'm doing everything I possibly can to please you guys as well, so.
We certainly appreciate what you do, and I think everybody, I can speak for the rest of board members, we welcome you, and you're doing a great job. Thank you so much. And if anybody stops at the assessor's office, she has a couple pet turtles down there that are looking for a larger home.
That was our deal. Yes. Absolutely, absolutely. And there is another exemption also. If I believe off the top of my head, I think the totals are like if your income is below 29,000 for the year and you're over 65, there could be bigger exemptions. But that's through the town, not through the state with the enhanced star. So I will be sending those renewals out. Those are called aged exemption. I'll be sending those renewal forms out to those people that receive them in October. Yes.
You mentioned that the state is going to take over renewing the enhancement, procedure. What about people that don't have to file income taxes anymore?
They say that they still have that accessibility to those people's incomes, even if they don't file state tax returns. They say that they still have the accessibility to their income. If they don't, they will be sending out forms. So if anybody gets a letter from New York State Taxation and Finance, please read it. Do not disregard it, because they will take everything away.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly. Appreciate it. Constables. Okay, thank you. And the seniors are not here. Tim Zuber, Wendell Engineers.
Well, thank you. We only have one thing on our engineering agenda this evening, and that is the Wheatfield Crossing subdivision. Give just a brief background of it. You know, the planning board has been looking at this project as well as the town for almost 2 years now. It started off as a sketch plan of a subdivision with the planning board that proceeded on through a coordinated review under seeker and some additional work that was done on the subdivision up to this summer's seeker determination and the public hearing that we had at the last meeting. The phase that we're at right now is preliminary plat, and the most attention that's been put into this to this point is basically on the layout, the plat map for the subdivision. And it deals a lot with the configurations of the lots, the verifying that the sizes of the lots meets the zoning code, the setbacks, and all the things that are required under that existing zoning are met by the layout of the subdivision. And that is the primary purpose of the preliminary plat. The next step that we'll get into after action on the preliminary plat is what they call the final plat, and that is really the final plat and the construction plans. There were several comments that I heard at the public hearing about drainage. So during this final plat and final construction plan sequence, that is where we go through the fine-tooth comb, all the drainage calculations, and make sure everything is done in accordance with both the state's regulations for stormwater and the town's regulations for stormwater. A cursory review of that was done during the seeker process, but it's this next phase where we get in and really look at detail everything and make sure pipes are sized big enough to convey rear yard drainage and street drainage to detention ponds and such. One of the other items I heard mentioned was construction access. And I believe it was discussed how the subdivision is kind of working with the grade of the land. The grade slopes from west to east, so to build a phase off of the Shawnee Road access first doesn't really work, because you have to really put the downstream infrastructure for things to flow to your sewer. We can't stop in the middle of the site or make it flow uphill. So the phasing is one of the things that in this final review will also be worked out in detail. The applicants will show on the plans where their phasing lines are going to be, and we'll make sure that utilities, as you get to those points, are still gonna work when they stop at those locations, as far as water pressures for water and fire hydrants, as well as the sanitary that was talked about before. I think the other one that we heard a lot about was the safety on Shawnee Road. And the applicant did recently just submit a stopping site distance analysis, which we requested.
You wanna tell everyone what that is, Tim?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically an analysis as you're, to, I think, look at the conditions that you're specifically concerned about. So there are minimum distances that are looked at in design for stopping site distance, just as you can imagine. It has to deal with reaction time and angles of view and heights of the person driving a car and the height of an object ahead of you. Obviously, coming north on Shawnee, you're coming up a hill, so there's really an infinite sight distance, so that's not really an issue. So we'll be looking at what it is coming over the crest of that hill, coming back down. So that stopping site distance analysis will also be, we've had conversations already this month with the DOT, so we'll be giving them that analysis, which they'll have their resident engineer also look at. So that is where we are at this
Right.
point.
Okay. Anybody, anything else, Tim?
No, that,
Okay, thank you, I
That's all.
appreciate it, and maybe that will clear things up a little bit, Julie, when it goes back to the planning board. Again, Walt is here, and Susan's also here, a planning board member. Thank you, Tim.
and actually, if it helps to, after the last meeting, I did have probably a 45-minute telephone conversation with Mr. Fickleshire, the
Fickleshire,
farmer on the north part, and I believe he just had no idea of what the plans were showing or even
Yeah.
the layout for that. Because within 45 minutes, I believe I answered every one of his
Yeah.
questions, and he thanked for the time. But it's hard to explain drainage when you're not looking at a plan.
But he
And,
did call me, just so you know, and thank me for having you go out there. And he feels more at ease. He's still gonna watch every move we make, but,
I'm sure he will.
yeah. Thank you, Tim, appreciate it. Okay, motions. Our attorney, Matt Brooks.
Okay, first motion is the one that Tim was referencing, from Wendell. Whereas the town of Wheatfield has received a subdivision application from DJC Land Inc. to subdivide a 53-acre parcel of land located between Shawnee Road and Talmay Road, north of Susaric Road, into 73 single-family residential lots. And whereas the town board, acting as seeker lead agency in accordance with the New York seeker law and the seeker regulations contained in 6 NYCRR Part 617, issued a negative declaration on July 6, 2020. And whereas the Wheatfield Planning Board has provided input and recommendations to the town board on July 15th, and the planning board meetings were open to the public to allow for input. And whereas the Wheatfield Town Board held the required public hearing on August 3rd, 2020, and received public comment, now therefore be it resolved that the Wheatfield Town Board approves the preliminary plat for the Wheatfield Crossing subdivision. And that is the end of the motion, but I believe there were some extra conditions the
Yeah.
town board was
I
interested
think
in
our
adding.
one, and Randy, if you wanna speak on this also, what, our concerns, one, were the, location on the hill and traffic, and, you also sent a notice back to DOT for further review?
Yeah, we spent the traffic assessment
Okay.
previously done and not commented on.
Okay, well, let's hopefully they do, they should, I mean, it's their responsibility to. And also, we had talked about, Paul had mentioned that, again, sending it to the planning board for the Hall Road to exit onto Shawnee Road. So we'll put that in another condition. Anything else, fellas, that we talked about, board members?
As Tim has said about a study on coming out on Shawnee,
Yeah, he's doing it.
and maybe possibly a turn lane there,
Well, that's something,
look into it.
possibly consider a turning lane also. But I think that's it. And if there's anything else, before we send it to the planning board, but I'll make the motion to approve subject to our conditions, unless we have any other conditions. So moved. I have a motion, have a second, please. I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Subject to our conditions.
Next motion from the Water Sewer Department to approve and authorize the request of Richard Donner, Water Sewer Superintendent, to contract with Advanced Rehabilitation Technology for 8 manhole repairs in the town's 2020 I&I removal project for a total cost of $21,660, for which the Niagara County Sewer District Number 1 shall reimburse $20,000 and the remainder shall be paid out of the town's 2020 sewer budget.
Just in brief, so that everyone knows, every year we get $20,000 from Niagara County Sewer District. And this year, because the Niagara County Sewer is also relining and repairing manholes, Richie was able to connect with them and continue to do the manholes that we have to be redone, and with a total cost of the town, as Matt had mentioned, for the above amount of over the, was it $1,600? Was that, Matt?
It was about $1,660
so
over.
The $20,000 of that is covered by Niagara County Sewer District, which is great. Anyway, I'll make the motion.
Second.
A motion and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Next motion, from Supervisor, Town Board, and Town Attorney, whereas the COVID-19 pandemic has severely impacted all municipal revenues and budgets, including those of the town of Wheatfield, and whereas the contracts between the town of Wheatfield and its 5 local fire companies are scheduled to expire at the end of 2020, and whereas the town of Wheatfield and said fire companies have been in negotiations to extend the current fire contracts for 1 additional year, 2021, at the same terms and same rates as in effect for 2020, and whereas the town of Wheatfield wishes to extend said contracts for 1 additional year, 2021, at the same terms and rates as those in effect for 2020, now therefore be it resolved that the town of Wheatfield hereby authorizes a 1-year extension for 2021 at the same terms and rates as in effect for 2020 of the 5 local fire company contracts that are scheduled to expire at the end of 2020. Said extensions are to be memorialized in a memorandum of agreement entered into with the fire company subject to review by the town attorney.
A motion, please. Have a motion, second. Have a motion and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Next motion is a motion refunding, it's a refunding bond resolution of the town board of the town of Wheatfield, Niagara County, New York, authorizing the issuance of the refunding bonds in the town in the aggregate principal amount not to exceed $2,950,000 pursuant to the local finance law and providing for other matters in relation thereto, and the payment of the bonds to be refunded thereby. And the remainder of the motion is contained in the motion package. I will not read that due to the length of it.
I'll make the motion.
Second. Have a motion and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Next motion, to be it resolved to authorize an adjustment to the water and sewer bill to the Shawnee Golf Course, account number 006472-000, which is to be reduced from the amount of $3,440.60 to the town water cost of $1,619.10 on the condition of prompt payment of said amount.
So moved. A motion and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Next motion, be it resolved to appoint Doug Collada as an alternate member of the Town of Wheatfield Planning Board for the remainder of 2020 to be paid at a rate set by the town board for each meeting which his attendance is necessary to fill in for an absence of a regular board member.
Motion and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Next motion from the town board, be it resolved, whereas the COVID-19 pandemic has severely impacted all municipal revenues and budgets, including those of the town of Wheatfield, and whereas a result of said financial burden to the town of Wheatfield has had to re-examine its expenses and cut them where reasonable and equitable, and whereas leaves of absences taken by employees and holders of appointed positions have been examined, and whereas the appointed position of bingo inspector has been examined due to no bingo occurring during the COVID-19 pandemic, now therefore be it resolved that the town of Wheatfield hereby resolves that any holders of appointed board positions within the town that are not subject to the town's personnel manual and its regulations, that are deemed to be on a leave of absence, said leave of absence defined as non-attendance for the respective board meetings for 4 or more consecutive meetings for reasons of an excusable absence shall not receive pay for the leave of absence period, and be it further resolved that due to a lack of bingo occurring and corresponding lack of other associated duties and work for the bingo inspector, that effective September 1st, 2020, the regular pay of the bingo inspector shall be suspended until bingo inspection duties resume with the commencement of bingo in the town of Wheatfield as allowed by regulations for the COVID-19 pandemic.
I have a motion. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Next motion, from the town board, be it resolved to change the streetlight at 40 Sunset from a 48-watt LED to a 25-watt LED due to a request from area residents. The change would cost $153.82 payable to National Grid.
And Matt, I think National Grid made an adjustment to that light, so the residents out at that area of Sunset Drive have said that the LED switch doesn't need to take place. So what National Grid did was the light was pointed up and it was shining at some houses, so they flattened it so it's parallel to the road, and everyone's happy out there, so we don't need a...
Okay, so withdraw the motion.
We just withdraw the motion.
Okay, sounds good.
That motion will be withdrawn.
Okay.
Next motion, again from the Water and Sewer Department, be it resolved to authorize a correction to a water and sewer bill to 2536 Niagara Road, account 00179-000, which is erroneous in the amount of $838.75 to the correct amount of $97.70.
So moved. Motion, somebody else make the motion, or second?
I think Kurt seconded.
Okay, all right. I can't hear if you guys in front.
Yeah, I think
Don and Kurt.
Yeah.
Don made the motion, Kurt seconded.
Do you want to flip for the motion, or? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Next motion from the town board, the budget director, and the town attorney, be it resolved to approve and authorize the town supervisor, Don McSwan, to sign and execute the attached contract with Municipal Solutions, Inc. for the proposed refunding of the town's $7,205,000 public improvement serial bonds 2011, subject to approval by the town budget director and town attorney.
Have a motion, please. Motion and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
And the final motion from town board, town attorney, and the Wheatfield Local Development Corporation, be it resolved, whereas on January 30th, 2020, the town of Wheatfield was awarded grant number 1245ED945-20 by the New York State Office of Community Renewal for the purposes of providing loans to Barge Brewing Company and to compensate the town for any administrative costs associated with the grant incurred by either the town or the Wheatfield Development Corporation. And whereas the town has learned that Barge Brewing project will not be moving forward and the town will not be requesting or dispersing any funds to the company, and whereas the Wheatfield Local Development Corporation incurred legal, grant administration, and grant compliance costs in preparation of loan issuance and has requested the town submit a request for funds to the state to compensate those costs, and whereas the New York State Office of Community Renewal has notified the town that said costs are eligible for reimbursement through grant number 1245ED945-20. Now therefore be it resolved that upon receipt of the documentation of expenditures from the Wheatfield Local Development Corporation for costs related to Barge Brewing Grant number 1245ED945-20, the town of Wheatfield will sign and submit a request for funds to the New York State Office of Community Renewal not to exceed $8,000 to reimburse the Wheatfield Local Development Corporation for eligible costs already incurred.
Second on the question. Just clarification, this isn't costing the town anything. The grant came through for Barge Brewery, but because of COVID, they obviously couldn't start up their operations, and there were some expenditures on some of the auditors that were in charge of this project. The grant's going to cover that funding. It won't be any expense from town of Wheatfield, correct, Matt?
That's correct. Of the grant monies, they'll pay those expenses, and I believe we'll get a request, eventually the remaining of money that we have will have to go back to the state. But we have enough to cover this expense now, and it's not out of our pocket.
We had a motion, correct?
Yes, and a second.
And second? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
And with that, there are no further motions.
Okay, let's move on to, Dave, hey, Mr. Godfrey, do you have anything for us?
Yeah, thank you. I'd just like to comment on an article that was in the paper just today regarding, the budget and some of the actions that the governor's looking at doing. The other night, our fellow legislator Gooch and the rest of us heard from our county manager. The county is gonna weather this if everything stays normal out of Albany. We got a good fund balance at the county, thanks to our treasurer and our budget director for squeezing us and keeping us under control. However, we're hearing that the governor is looking to cut 20% off of the unfunded mandates. Well, that's your Medicare, your pension, child welfare, probation, and so on. Those are 9 for 90 unfunded mandates. 90% of the county budget, 90% is made up by those nine unfunded mandates. If the governor goes ahead and cuts that 20%, things are going to change. It's going to get ugly. It's a big nut, a lot of money, and I'm sure that all of our 12 towns and our 5 villages are looking very closely at this. But as we go forward, we need to keep an eye on this. We need to push back as much as we can. I know Jesse and I are constantly looking at all that we can do with the county to keep us above water. That article did say that they're looking at doing that. The governor is close to doing that. I hope it doesn't happen, but we suspect it may. That's all I had. I agree with you.
Dave, any projection when you may hear about this?
On what?
When you may hear about this?
Where it was in the paper?
No. Okay, but any idea of if in fact it's going to happen, when it'll happen? No. When? When are they projecting?
When would it happen? Well, almost any time. I would suspect by October.
Okay.
Where they are right now in the budget cycle, the best I could discern is going to probably be by October, I would think. Jesse? That's about the time frame. I would not expect it much later than October because you're right in the budget season.
Right.
Because our preliminary is coming out here pretty quick. Our county manager's pretty well got that nailed down. He's going to be looking at it here in the next couple of weeks. So we got to hold our breath and hope that maybe we get some federal aid in there to, what do we say, ride the crest.
Sad part is they don't have any money either. No, I said the federal government doesn't have any money either. They spent it all.
No, the federal government, is holding back on the funding. I'm not sure whether Trump's going to come through with it or not. Countrywide, it's not just New York State, it's just not this end of the state. I mean, the whole country. When you look at the wildfires that are going on out there, 13 counties out in the west. And if you look at Texas, there's just as many wildfires going on. There's destruction going on all over the place. And that's where your federal aid kicks in, is those type of natural disasters. You got another hurricane coming up. It's going to hit the coast there in the Gulf. So it's all sorts of devastation on devastation, unfortunately. But here locally, we're going to do the best we can. We'll squeeze $1 out and be here and fight it off.
Thank you, Dave. Jesse?
I really just want to echo what Dave said and talk on the Wood Road issue. Tomorrow is our ledge meeting. I want to remind everybody that it's being live streamed on LCTV and Spectrum now. We are going to try to make a motion, I believe, tomorrow to move the times from 7 p.m. to 6 p.m. Is that on your agenda for tomorrow? Yep. Okay, so if that passes, we're going to have our meetings at 6 instead of 7. Other than that, I just wanted to talk on the Ward Road thing, and there's really nothing else I have that I can think of.
Yeah. You know, Jesse, maybe you would like to coordinate
Whatever Spectrum channel is, maybe it's channel 1, channel 9.
yeah, 1 and 9, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jesse, maybe the other thing too, and I think it's a good idea, if not only the county, but the town puts pressure on DOT to continue forth with this intersection.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Thank you.
Whose birthday is it? Oh, thank you.
Did you have a birthday, Dan?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't. Anyway, let's move on. Where are we here? Thanks, Dave. Larry Hellwig.
A couple things. I was talking to our IT consulting company, Lynx, and they're in Grand Island, service some Grand Island and some other municipalities in Erie County. And we're talking to our grants writer, where, the town grant money looks like it's going to be going down. It doesn't look like there's going to be a whole lot of grant money coming in 2020 or 2021. So he mentioned, well, why don't you check into this money that Erie County municipalities are getting? And I did check into it. I just going to read you an email I got from Becky Witter. She's the chairman of the Niagara County Legislature. And then she's in response to my question, is Niagara County getting any of this money? And she said, because Erie County has a population of 500,000, they receive $160 million in CARES Act funding directly from the federal program. There are only 5 counties outside of New York City that qualified. Larger cities like Niagara Falls also receive direct funding. The rest of our portion was included in the money that went directly to the state and the governor of New York State. So all I was thinking is, if our county legislators can, and you probably have already done this, but if you could, Niagara County has to be one of the few counties directly in alignment with Canada, and our sales tax dollars that come into us, because of COVID, Canada's been shut down. They're still shut down. They may not open up to the rest of the year. Our sales tax dollars, if it's 20, I don't know what Niagara County's portion they get from Canada, but it's quite large. So we're hurting. I mean, you go down the middle of the state, how many Canadians go to Steuben County, I'm not picking on those counties, but how many Canadian dollars show up in those counties? We're getting really hit hard without having that Canadian traffic here. Luckily, you saw our auditors tonight, we've got a decent fund balance, but that fund balance is there for a rainy day. It's raining now. We're going to be using some of it, but you don't want this fund balance to be drained in 1 year. So if we can, through the county, I mean, we can put requests into the governor's office too, but Erie County's getting $160 million. It'd be nice just to get $1 million into Niagara County, but I mean, $160 million. And how much bigger is Erie County? 4 times? 5 times bigger?
Population?
Yeah.
We're at 216.5, so we're a little less than half. I'd like to see half of that money.
Yeah, so we're not, it seems a little bit, I mean, $80 million would be nice, but
Larry, if you think about it, why is Erie County getting money and Niagara County's getting nothing? And I don't want to talk about politics. It's not my position to say it.
The federal
but
program
it doesn't look good.
It was based on the federal program stipulating populations, but
I know.
maybe the way our counties are, divvied up in Niagara County versus other states in the United States, I don't know. But if we can do something to try to get the governor to push some money our way, it seems like the governor's sitting on a bunch of it. It would be nice if we could, get some of that money. And we can use a lot of excuses to get it. And Canadian traffic, I think, is one of them. The other thing is we have Wi-Fi, thanks to, Dave Godfrey and his actions at the county, putting Wi-Fi, public Wi-Fi, in the back parking lots of the town hall and the community center. I see the schools are opened up. I saw an article, I don't know what paper it was or whether it was on television, but they're looking for Wi-Fi hotspots. Some families don't have, wireless internet. And they may have a wired internet where one PC is connected, but they don't have the wireless router. So if families need it, it's here. I know the Tribune already put one posting in there, but we want to make sure people know that we've got free public Wi-Fi in the parking lot here. And you got to be careful of spam and viruses. The bad guys are out there. They tried to get into our county attorney's pocketbook here today. He got a nice email from someone in Niagara County, and it looked legit. I looked at it, and the email looked legit, except it was asking for his user ID and password And you don't give that to your mother-in-law or anybody. So you have to be careful of who you give your password to and your user ID. So there's a lot of bad stuff happening out there on the internet, and just beware. That's all I have for tonight.
Okay, thank you. Gil?
Got some communication from Adams Fire Hall. They'd like to add Stephanie's name and Jared Stunner to the active roster. And I'll make that motion.
A motion and a second, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Communication from St. Johnston Fire Company. They'd like to add Josh Whitzer and Thaddeus Hill to the active roster. I'll make that motion.
Motion and second, all in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Is that it, Gil?
We're doing a lot of talking tonight about the Department of Transportation. On Friday, I received a letter in the mail from, I figured, oh boy, it's for a public hearing or something about Ward Road and intersection. It was a collapsed drainage that's on Ward Road. Instead, they sent me a letter saying that they condemned my mailbox post. Been in there for 20 years, it's 3 inches, and it was, they said it was illegal. And apparently they must be looking, and I only live about a mile and a half from Wood Road intersection. Apparently they must really be studying our area. That's my DOT,
Paul was gone, and he had mentioned something about them looking for a federal grant, and they've gone through the whole area. Somebody else had a post, it was, Richie Donner. His post is 2.5 inches, and they told him it was yeah, got it.
25 years it's been there.
Take care of that, will you, Gil? Anything else, Gil? Okay. Randy Retzloff. Oh, I'm sorry, Kurt Doctor. Anybody have anything for Kurt? We are gonna meet, briefly, I'm sorry? You know, years ago, it's funny you mentioned that, Susan, we used to receive the flags here at the town hall. They would deliver a case of them. And it was either from the county or from the state, but we always had high-quality flags here. And I don't know what happened. I know they used to have a case of flags, but they disappeared, so I don't know. Dave, I don't know, maybe you and Jesse would know. No, nothing? Thank you, Susan. Randy? Okay. I've got a couple things. Once again, I just want to thank all the veterans besides Tom. It was great to be a part of the, call it helicopter raising ceremony. There was many veterans there. Tom was there. It was just a wonderful time, and I think Tom knows this, and this has gone back years when I was building inspector, trying to get it moving, trying to get the monument going, and the committees where there was infighting, there was never an agreement about anything. And I appreciate the town board support to see it finally being done. And we're even looking and we're talking about possibly having a Veterans Day celebration here this year, which would really be something to, I mean, it won't be done, but to have a celebration here with all of our local veterans. And I got to say, we have veterans from all over. We had helicopter mechanics, people from town of Cambria coming to work on the helicopter that really wanted to be involved. And my hat's off to all of them. I'm hoping when the time does come that we can thank them all personally in a group from the town board, possibly at Veterans Day. And Tom, I know we were talking about challenge coins. If anybody knows what a challenge coin is, and when I was in the service, if you carried a coin that was your units and you had someone who was a good friend of you, you would hand them a challenge coin. And it would have your unit on it. Sometimes they had a saying on it, God bless, stay safe, things like this. And Tom came up with the idea of having challenge coins. And I think it's a great idea for all the town board members, anybody when we do the dedication, to be involved and get a challenge coin. They're not that much, and I think it's a great way of kind of celebrating everybody getting a challenge coin. Anyway, the social distancing. I hope people realize, and I touched on it earlier, what we have to do because of state mandates. It's not just this building, it's any of our town facilities. We just recently opened up the community center, as everybody knows, and we have to do contact tracing there. A lot of people don't like it. There's some, and you know, and I think a lot of it is related to COVID-19. People are stressed, people are anxious, but it's something we have to do. And I want to thank the constables for their involvement in helping us out, because we've had some people that are not happy about coming and having to sign a contact tracing information and wearing a mask. These guys have done a great job. I would like to remind you, though, that if people don't pre-register, they don't get in. And, of course, tonight I got upset because people are coming in here that were not on the list, and we have to do that to maintain social distancing. And for a few minutes there, we didn't have it. So I would appreciate your cooperation at the next meeting just to make sure if they don't pre-register, as bad as I feel about it, they don't get in. Because tonight we already exceeded our limit for a few minutes there. As far as the budget goes, Ed, I want to thank you. Ed and I have met to discuss the budget. We sat down with the department heads this week. Ed, thank you for your knowledge. Without Ed, I would have one heck of a time, but you've been great. I really appreciate it. I consider you a friend. But I will say this, the town of Wheatfield has been cutting our budgets, and only, not because we're just saying, hey, we're going to cut everybody's budget, because we have to. And I think later on, when the budget process is done, you'll see why we did. We've taken a hit in sales tax. We've taken a hit not bringing money in through the court system, recreation, even here. So it's going to be a tough year next year. We're hoping with cooperation, and I think I mentioned this before, several organizations, Niagara County Sheriff Department, the SPCA, I have a list here somewhere, have agreed and not taken any increase in wages this year. So I want to say everybody's doing their part, and I want to thank all of the organizations. When the time does come and we do a final budget, and we know what we have, but so far everybody has been receptive to no increase in wages because of the COVID-19. And in time, we'll do a statement and thank you to everybody who's been involved. And Ed, thank you. Obviously we still have to operate. We still have to spend money because there's certain things that are necessary that we have to do to provide services to the town. But it's going to be a lean year coming up. So I hope everybody appreciates that and pay attention. Watch our budget. We'll see what we got here. And even the town board, everybody's agreed here not to take an increase. Our engineers, everybody has agreed to not take an increase. So, and it's greatly appreciated. Who would think in our times that we've gone through this? But we are, and we're doing the best that we can. Once again, thank you folks for attending tonight's meeting. Yes, Doug.
My name is Doug Slaughter. I was appointed to the planning board for the town tonight. I just want to take a moment to thank Susan Everline, Matt Brooks, members of the board, and Supervisor McSwan. Thanks for the opportunity.
Oh, certainly, and I'm sure in talking with you that you'll do a wonderful job.
Thank you.
Plus you're military. That's a joke. Okay, with that, our next meeting is September 28th, 2020 at 6:30. Any additional public input? Thank you. We are going to not adjourn. We're going to break session and meet with the focus group. You're welcome to stay and listen for a few minutes if you'd like. And I'm sure it won't take too long, but we're going to just meet for a few minutes, okay? Thank you for coming tonight, folks.
Okay. Okay, we started talking really seriously about this corner in 2019. And even though this picture is a little shaded, it looks lovely, doesn't it? But it looks lovely because volunteers have maintained it and manicured it to stay that way. Its growth is exponential now. Everything is mature, so every year it's a big job to take care of it. So driving through Lockport, Tom and I happened to see that at North Transit they have an illuminated sign that is backlit LED, and it spells out North Transit with some lettering underneath it about their attachment to the canalway. And I thought this might be a really great repurpose for that wall. So we worked with Wendell. I had initially gotten an illustration of this wall from another supplier, and Wendell took it and created this illustration of the wall. This lacks the bench and the light standard for crosswalk, but basically it's there to give you the impact of identifying Wheatfield. And there's a nighttime version. To accomplish this, we're proposing that if the board approves the project, to remove the granite curbing and the vegetation from the site and pave this area
so that it's a flat surface. We would like to have the brick wall or concrete wall painted dark gray and add electrical to illuminate the lettering. We would have to purchase and have the lettering installed, and the letter size on this illustration is 2 feet by 2 feet. We could add a phrase below it identifying what Wheatfield is all about in smaller letters, not illuminated. And I don't think we have that. It's at the very end. There it is. But that's a whole different concept now, so it might be ahead of ourselves, Kurt. Yeah. Our suggestions were a right to farm community. Farming is our heritage, and farming is in our roots. Now the next slide, keep going, Kurt. Next one. Now, had the corner not been taken care of for the last 5 or 6 years, on the left is what the tree would look like if it were not pruned and taken care of. This tree currently is at the corner of Kruger and Niagara Falls Boulevard. It's on the state right-of-way, and from talking with Paul, he said that the property owner doesn't want to have to take care of anything on that state right-of-way. So this tree looks like a bush, and we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. On the right, though, is some of the hosta plants that Tom planted there several years ago, and after a period of heavy rain, the thistle took off, and you can't tell the thistle from the hostas. So this is a constant maintenance issue. So what we are proposing for 2021 Mm. That's right. And when we talk about the Wheatfield Garden Club maintaining it, it's me and Tom. And the majority of the members of the Wheatfield Garden Club are all aging, and taking care of the grounds around the campus here is a big enough challenge for them, let alone this site. So we want to work within the annual budget location to start accomplishing that goal and explore if any of the work can be performed by town departments, because we know that they do excellent work and we can rely on their high quality for a product that's going to have endurance. Jesse Gooch has offered his company to paint the wall for us, and he confirmed that with me just before this meeting. We would solicit bids for concrete paving of the excavated area and purchase and install the town and county plaques if we decided to go those routes, and the lettering for the wall, and other miscellaneous costs to be determined.
here also, yes, because this is really kind of a main intersection, town hall campus is here, community center. I'm not saying this isn't nice, but I really would like to make sure we focus with DOT changing this corner too, and I'm sure we can work something out where St. John's Church, I'm sure they'd be more than agreeable to dedicate some property to the town of Wheatfield to improve the whole look of that corner, because just my opinion, I think this is great, but I mean, the corner now itself, is that dilapidated, where it needs that much work?
The DOT did the total installation, yes.
What's your thought?
I think if we could accomplish this in 2021, that might be logical and workable, but as costs are going up every year, and with companies going out of business, you might be looking at increased cost over time. The one thing I wanted to mention, Don, as a result of the conversation that we had on our Zoom meeting with the DOT and the relocation of the entrance to the park, they talked about the town putting in their express desires to do some work to enhance Wheatfield that would tie into that budget or into that project, and therefore reduce the cost to Wheatfield. And maybe and that would be as compared to what they call a betterment project, where the town, if they decided after the DOT project was all done, to put, let's say, a pad and a piece of farm equipment in front of Oppenheim Park. It would be the town's responsibility to pay for this whole thing. And if we could utilize the DOT project in conjunction with some of these ideas, it may better financially benefit us.
But have they discussed or agreed about enhancing areas other than National Boulevard, along the boulevard?
No.
Okay, so Ward and the boulevard. That's a perfect intersection to enhance Wheatfield, so, because you've got the church there, you've got all the town hall campus here, and I'm only one person, I'm just giving you my opinion, not that this isn't great, but I would hope that DOT, meeting with you, will consider cleaning up this corner also. So let me make clear. So there's really two efforts. Yes. One is the project that's going on. We absolutely agree that opportunity to visit with that project. I think this is totally separate, and I'm trying to figure out if we need. Well, I guess my concern is, we're gonna do this and we'll of this. No, the plan is to do this in addition to whatever we do. The only other thing that I have to say is, that as you know, the construction, my concern is, and as you know, we're trying to get the Veterans Memorial completed. I've been working with Tom on trying to get some more money to get that together, and I think this is important too. This is a question of issue if you'd like.
Well, can we finish the presentation before we go any further talking about money? As I mentioned earlier, this is the cleaned up version of what Wendell came up with. Part of our concept was to include some sort of farm implement in the illustration to kind of carry the idea that we're a farming community a little bit further. So they came up with putting this cultivator, which is Randy's, on top of the building. and it didn't fly, literally. Uh, so we went back. Yeah, yeah, it was a great idea until we saw it, and then it just didn't fly. And then also looking at the seals, it's the Niagara County seal and the Wheatfield seal on the pillars. They really are too small to put on there. It would be lost. They're lost, yeah. And one of the things that the DOT mentioned in their Zoom meeting was the fact that you don't want something that's going to distract people trying to read what that says from driving safely on the boulevard. So, yeah, we kind of nixed that idea at our last meeting. And then I think the next slide is a nighttime presentation of that. And this kind of carries forth the fact that there is no lighting on that corner at all. The only lighting that is on that intersection is on the north side of the boulevard. So this is completely dark at night. So can you imagine somebody driving through Wheatfield at night and having this as a visual of where they're at? So I've got a couple of appendixes here, or I have another appendix here. Now I don't have the kind of computer programs that they have at Wendell, but I was playing and created this on my computer. The scale is not perfect, but the farm implement is about 1/3 of the size of the length of the inner portion of this wall. So we could probably reduce the cost of the installation of the letters by reducing the Wheatfield proportionately to not be obscured by the farm implement. And the wheat symbols, I just kind of pulled some clip art off of the internet to show, you know, there's this big thing about having greenery and planting things and things like that. But it's not a practical thing for that corner because of maintenance. So Tom has been working with Milius Welding in North Tonawanda for the project for the securing the helicopter to its base. And there, Debbie Milius has graphic art. And she is going to see if she can pull up a simplified sheaf of wheat drawing that can be made into a piece of steel that could be powder coated, painted the color of wheat, and affixed to each of those pillars. And I think the radiant light at night would illuminate those. They would not be mounted flush on the wall. I'd like to see them pulled out a bit for effect. And then the next two slides are just the other sayings that I put in there under the word Wheatfield. Now, at our last physical meeting, Julie came up with Julie and Doris came up with the idea of having a smaller version of this sign along the boulevard, as you said, at Ward Road, and perhaps even further down, maybe at Cy, that would carry on the theme. And those would be considerations for inclusion in the DOT project. But the DOT also told us that we should get those thoughts in writing to present to them for possible inclusion in the project. So that's it. Any questions? Now, Don.
I like the whole thing. I really do. I like the idea that Julie had of possibly placing something else along the boulevard, because it's not just Madison Boulevard. And I've always said Wheatfield doesn't have an identity. Everybody drives from Niagara Falls to Amherst and back and forth. I always thought that something like the corner of National Boulevard, when they put that in there, you can identify that. Just like you can identify that sign. There's no missing that. You're in the town of Wheatfield.
Mm-hmm.
No, I agree with the whole thing.
Now, one thing about these letters is they are LED illuminated in the back, so they, at night, they kind of wash the wall. Uh, I'm sure the cost could be greatly reduced by not having them illuminated, but having some lighting expert determine how it can be lit from above, like with a flood or something like that, attached perhaps to the crosswalk pole. Those are all things that we could investigate to try to pare down what the initial cost would be, because these letters are very expensive. 10 grand.
Where are you gonna pull the power from? Where are you gonna pull it from?
There's a power pole right there, where the street signs are, and an electric meter to operate all the signage that's at that intersection.
You're gonna subdevelop it off a ward and you put that new sign in, that was like 20 grand just for the power? You know, just because they gotta cut the road and. Well, if all this works out, that whole equipment. I like the idea of the Wheatfield ones that stand up. And the spotlight on it is nice. That could illuminate people that are, oh, by the Wheatfield sign, and they're just gonna stand up.
Mm-hmm.
They cost more, but I think it's your call. I think in the long run, it costs less to power LEDs than the spotlight.
Undoubtedly. And Wendell gave us 3 vendors that deal with this. The one is Ulrich in Lockport. The other is, who are you dealing with on Grand Island? ASI? ASI on Grand Island, and another company in Rochester that deals in this kind of lighting. And we could approach them on what, once we finalize a design and a concept that we're going to be working with, what they think it would cost us. I think just reducing the size of the letters to incorporate the farm implements off to the right-hand side would have to reduce the cost somewhat. We have to file a Perm 33 with them and go through all of their paperwork. One of the things that when I spoke with the gentleman in Lockport, was they want to see a rendering of what we're talking about. So, this is what we're trying to arrive at.
I like it, and I agree that there should be another sign too. One of them maybe where you come right into ND. You still feel like you're in ND when you come out of the set. The only negative thing I got is what we're coming into as far as money. We're asking everybody in Wheatfield not to take a raise. Sheriff already agreed not to take a raise, and I'm gonna go there, we're gonna say now we got money for this stuff, but we didn't have enough for the employees to bring anything. I don't know how that's gonna hit home.
Too, as I mentioned before, and I get it, because I'm working with these guys every day about wages. We still have to keep moving.
I agree, I think it's
something like this would benefit the town. Another spot I thought of too, and we're talking about different locations, maybe even a triangular shaped sign coming from both directions at Oppenheim Park. That's completely open there.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to be redoing that intersection. But when you go down the boulevard, you can see the front of Oppenheim Park in both directions. And I'm just talking about another spot. I like it. I would like to get an idea of what it's going to cost us. prices to see where it is. Again, we're trying to get the Veterans Memorial done, and that's a big push. Trying to put some money aside for them this year. If you're asking for the same amount that you asked for last year, hopefully, and I'll have to talk, is that here? We can come up with that amount of money. I know we also had donations, given to the Veterans Memorial, correct, huh?
Yes.
Maybe there's something we can do along the lines to get donations, to get people involved. Yeah. And I think it's a great idea. We've got to identify Wheatfield as Wheatfield. And I know it's a tough year. I know I'm meeting with the union Thursday, trying to get them to make a cut too. It's a tough year. I don't know what to say. But if we could come up with a 20,000. That's my only concern. Otherwise, I think it's good. But Fred, if we could come up with that 20,000 this year, possibly do it again next year, maybe then that would cover the cost. I mean, I don't want to see you get nothing because I know what the amount of what you've done as far as the group. It'd be nice if they came back, it's going to cost 19.5.
Mhm.
Doesn't sound like, or possibly change the theory that could bring us within budget somehow. I don't know. And I would like to see you get the same amount in your budget this year. I've not been meeting with Ed all week, and we're trying to move some things around to make sure that the Veterans Memorial gets taken care of, and like do something like this. And maybe we can squeeze out that 20,000 this year, another 20,000 next year, and that would take care of it.
So here's what I'm doing. Proceed with the cost today, and that'll be an informal cost, or I'll come back to you with what the costs are, and then at that point we'll decide if we want to or not. But our budget request for 2021 is the same as what we got for 2020, and our plan would be that with those funds that we basically have been given, it's not incremental,
Now, I would like to say one more thing. We still have $3,000 in our budget for 2020. And Wendell already has the preliminary drawings of this wall. And I believe that Tim Zuber came back to us when we asked to make a revision to it, that it would cost us $500 for them to make the additional revision to incorporate everything that we asked them to. So if we could expend some of the money from our budget to Wendell to have them, once we come up with a concept, to get us started, to go to a vendor and say, this is what we're looking at. Can you give us prices? I think that's, yeah.
I guess like we're all thinking, what's it going to cost? And, only because of the times that we're in right now.
Mhm.
And I would love to see it. I'd love to see it tomorrow.
Yeah.
But this year is tough, as everybody knows. And if we can squeeze that 20,000 into your budget again this year, I'm sure we'll do it. It's just a matter of how the board is after we get done going through the budget.
One of the things that would help us to determine cost on here would be a cost comparison of what it would be to have a contractor do the removal and compare it to the highway department perhaps spending a day or so or part of a day to remove the installation that's there. And that would give us a cost savings. No. There's a curb, a 4-inch curb that goes between the pillars. And yeah, to remove that and dispose of the greenery. And perhaps even lay the groundwork for paving like they did for the concrete pad for the tank. Mm-hmm.